The current Russia-Ukraine war is a complicated mix of many things that have brought us to this point. What on earth exists in Ukraine?
We've rallied the international community to commit a total of $25 billion in bilateral and multilateral financing to support Ukraine. It includes $2 billion in U.S. loan guarantees and the possibility of more. That is not the end of what we're prepared to do if you keep moving. Please, for the sake of the rest of us, selfishly on my part, don't waste it.
Both Biden after the Minsk agreement was reached in 2015 and Pelosi during her recent visit to Kiev, Ukraine should continue to fight Russia. They have stated, the U.S. will not work for a ceasefire.
We believe that we are visiting you to say thank you for your fight for freedom, that we are on a frontier of freedom and that your fight is a fight for everyone. And so our commitment is to be there for you until the fight is done.
In 2016, during the U.S. presidential election, Poroshenko clearly indicated his support for Hillary Clinton. Given his relationship with Biden, this is unsurprising. It is said that if Hillary had won the presidential election, the current Russian-Ukrainian war would have been hastened by several years. Why didn't the conflict between Russia and Ukraine intensify under the Trump administration? In an August 2016 interview, before he became president, he said this about Ukraine.
They took away the part of the platform calling for provision of lethal weapons to Ukraine to defend themselves. Why is that a good idea?
Look, I have my own ideas. He's not going into Ukraine, okay? Just so you understand. He's not going to go into Ukraine. I'm going to take a look at it. But, the people of Crimea, from what I've heard, would rather be with Russia than where they were. And you have to look at that also. Now, that was just so you understand, that was done under Obama's administration. And as far as the Ukraine is concerned, it's a mess. And that's under the Obama's administration with his strong ties to NATO.
You've said
and we'll do better, and yet we'll have a better relationship with Russia. And having a good relationship, maybe, and having a good relationship with Russia is a good thing, not a bad thing.
Arms support for Ukraine, the Crimea issue, and NATO. Now, this shows that since that time, he has accurately captured the concerns that President Putin currently has. Russiagate was brought up immediately after the presidential election victory. Allegations that Putin intervened in the election to let Trump win have recently been revealed to have been a fabrication by the Democrats. President Trump said after meeting with President Putin for the first time since taking office.
It was a face-to-face meeting. It was a long meeting. It was 2 hours and 15 minutes. Yeah. Everyone was surprised by the amount of time, but that was a good thing, not a bad thing.
Sure.
I think we got along very well, and I think that's a good thing. That's not a bad thing.
Yeah.
People said, oh, they shouldn't get along. Well, who are the people that are saying that? I think we got along very, very well. We're a tremendously powerful nuclear power, and so are they.
That's right.
It doesn't make sense not to have some kind of a relationship. It's something you don't even like talking about, but again, we're the most powerful country in the world, and we are getting more and more powerful because I'm a big military person. As an example, if Hillary had won, our military would be decimated. Our energy would be much more expensive. That's what Putin doesn't like about me. And that's why I say, why would he want me? Because from day one, I wanted a strong military. He doesn't want to see that. And from day one, I want fracking and everything else to get energy prices low and to create tremendous energy. We're going to be self-supporting. We just about are now. We're going to be exporting energy. He doesn't want that. He would like Hillary, where she wants to have windmills. Okay? He would much rather have that because energy prices will go up, and Russia, as you know, relies very much on energy. So there are many things that I do that are the exact opposite of what he would want. So when I keep hearing about that he would have rather had Trump, I think probably not, because when I want a strong military, she wouldn't have spent the money on the military, but when I want a strong military, when I want tremendous energy, we're opening up coal, we're opening up natural gas, we're opening up fracking, all the things that he would hate, but nobody ever mentions that.
It was well thought out to not allow Russia to create conditions and an environment conducive to action on the military and economic fronts. Nord Stream 2 was also not approved by the Trump administration.
Would you like to say something?
Meanwhile, the Ukrainian government is taking military action against the Donbass.
Хорошо. Дважды предприняли попытку украинские власти с помощью силы решить вопрос на Донбассе. Дважды. Хотя уговаривали не делать этого. Я вот лично уговаривал Порошенко. Только не военные операции. Да. И начал. Результат. Окружение, потери и Минские соглашения. Они хорошие или нет? Я считаю, что единственно возможные. Так проблема в чем? Не хотят исполнять. Не хотят исполнять.
In August 2018, Alexander Zaharchenko, leader of the Donetsk People's Republic, was killed by a bomb planted in a cafe he visited. Donetsk and the Russian Federation blamed Ukrainian authorities, but Kiev officials refused to acknowledge and said Zaharchenko's death was the result of civil unrest in Donetsk. President Putin expressed his condolences to Zaharchenko's family and called his death a despicable murder, but he did not use it as an excuse for military action. The number of separatist forces, estimated to have numbered about 50,000 at the beginning of the 2014 to 2015 conflict, which was marked by heavy fighting, has been gradually reduced. In 2018, the pro-Russian force is estimated at about 31,000 soldiers, about 80% of whom are Donbass residents, about 25,000, 15% foreign mercenaries, about 5,000, and about 3% Russian soldiers, about 900. Thus, in May 2019, Ukraine will be under the Zelensky administration. Trump-Zelensky conference call on July 25, 2019. This phone conversation with Zelensky over the resumption of suspended arms transfers to Ukraine raised the issue of an anonymous whistleblower's document that allegedly requested cooperation in a corruption investigation of the Biden father and son.
How good the U.S. is to Ukraine.
Thank you very much. It's a great honor.
Thank you very much.
Ukraine scandal, which was brought up shortly after Zelensky's presidency, culminated in the impeachment of President Trump.
I think good phone call. It was normal. We spoke about many things, and I think, and you read it, that nobody pushed me.
Biden and his son are stone cold crooked, and you know it. His son walks out with millions of dollars. The kid knows nothing. You know it, and so do we. Go ahead, ask a question.
But the question, sir, was what did you want President Zelensky to do about Vice President Biden and his son Hunter?
Are you talking to me?
Yeah, it was just a follow-up of what I just asked you, sir.
Listen, you ready? We have the President of Finland. Ask him a question.
I have one for him. I just wanted to follow up on the one that I asked you, which was,
Did you hear
what
me?
did you want
Did you hear me?
Yes,
Ask
sir.
him a question.
I will, but
I've given you a long answer. Ask this gentleman a question. Don't be rude.
No, sir, I don't want to be rude. I just wanted you to have a chance to answer the question that I asked you.
I've answered everything. It's a whole hoax. And you know who's playing into the hoax? People like you and the fake news media that we have in this country. And I say in many cases, the corrupt media, because you're corrupt. Much of the media in this country is not just fake, it's corrupt. And you have some very fine people, too. Great journalists, great reporters. But to a large extent, it's corrupt and it's fake.
Ukraine's flagship initiative in its fight against widespread graft. But here at the newly installed High Court of Anti-Corruption, the cases are rapidly piling up. In the dock, a former deputy governor of the National Bank. He's a suspect in an embezzlement case of nearly $50 million. With a bailout package approved for Ukraine, the IMF is pressing the government to recover an estimated $15 billion that disappeared from the country's banks. They include one previously owned by a supporter of President Volodymyr Zelensky.
Readiness is here, and we really wanted to return all this money to the country. This process, clean up, it was a very painful for the society, for the government, for the budget. But today, I can honestly tell you, I don't see any alternative to this process.
The impeachment process in the US has focused people's attention on Ukraine's long history of corruption.
Combating corruption was one of President Zelensky's most important election promises, but his connections to one of Ukraine's richest oligarchs and the phone call with President Trump, in which he said that the state prosecutor was 100% his person, has caused some concerns.
In January 2020, the Democratic House of Representatives decided to impeach President Trump. But the impeachment, instead, brought to light the reality of corruption in Ukraine.
Well, you start looking at this bank records, according to reports, between April 2014 and October 2015, Burisma paid more than $3.1 million to Devon Archer and Hunter Biden.
Devon Archer, named here, is a former aide to John Kerry. He is also involved in the connection between former Prime Minister Massimov and the Biden father and son, who were arrested for treason during the riots in Kazakhstan earlier this year.
Just confirmed, a Ukrainian court ordered Joe Biden to be formally listed in a criminal case. The crime? The alleged firing of Ukraine's former Prosecutor General Viktor Shokin in exchange for dropping an investigation into Joe Biden's son, Hunter Biden, and the company for which he was a board member, Burisma Oil. The Ukrainian government at the time relieved Shokin of his post in exchange for $1 billion in loan guarantees promised by Biden, a bribe Biden himself admitted to doing.
Prosecutor's not fired, you're not getting the money. Oh, son of a bitch. Got fired.
Hey, Mr. President, Joe Biden, how are you?
Very well indeed. As usual when I hear your voice. Thank you very much.
Well, you are doing very well. Congratulations on getting the new Prosecutor General.
That's a fact.
His son, Hunter, was the well-paid director of a controversial energy company called Burisma.
Gas company Burisma.
Burisma. Group of energy exploration and production companies. It accounts for about 26% of Ukraine's private natural gas production and 5% of Ukraine's total production. In eastern Ukraine, the company operates in the Kharkiv, Luhansk, and Dnipropetrovsk oblasts. The Kharkiv Battalion, Idar Battalion, and Dnipro Battalion in the right sector are based in that area, respectively. And in the suburbs of the Azov River, where Burisma has a license to develop, is the Azov Battalion. Burisma Holdings does not disclose its performance. It has always been a target of money laundering and other fraud investigations.
State Department records show Hunter Biden met with Deputy Secretary of State Tony Blinken regarding Burisma. Several more mysterious trips to the State Department ensue.
Antony Blinken is of Eastern European Jewish ancestry. Speechwriter for Bill Clinton, assistant to the Vice President for National Security Affairs in the Obama administration, Deputy Secretary of State, and now Secretary of State in the Biden administration. He has been involved in every military intervention in another country conducted under a Democratic administration since 1999. Serbia, Afghanistan, Iraq, and Iran's nuclear program. He was actively involved in the Syrian and Libyan civil wars and supported NATO's military action against Libya and the provision of arms to Syrian rebels. It is fair to say that he has always been hostile to President Vladimir Putin, who assumed the Russian presidency in 2000. Shortly before the 2020 presidential election, a Republican Senate committee concluded that there was no evidence of Biden's misconduct.
Добрый день, уважаемые коллеги. Сегодняшняя пресс-конференция посвящена новым фактам разоблачения международной коррупции и внешнего управления Украиной.
In December 2020, Ukrainian Congressman Andrei Delkiksi, who attended this press conference, was sanctioned by the U.S. in September 2020 for attempting to intervene in the U.S. election campaign by pro-Russian groups. This accusation from Ukraine was put away as an election maneuver to the U.S. presidential election. In recent years, there have been high hopes for natural gas exploration in Ukraine. Far more natural gas reserves than were thought to exist in eastern Ukraine are said to lie beneath the Carpathian Mountains in western Ukraine. If exploration is successful, it is expected to be one of the largest gas reserves in Europe in a single gas field. No matter how much warfare Ukraine suffers, the resources lying underground will not be affected. Given the enormous amount of Western assistance to Ukraine in the form of loans, where will Ukraine's natural resource interests go after the war?
This is the first one I'm signing.
On January 20, 2021, shortly after taking office, Biden signed an executive order that placed restrictions on access to federal lands, suspended oil and gas lease sales, and halted the Keystone XL pipeline. That means energy production will be shifted to other countries. Although it is said to be a response to the climate change problem, it has led to the loss of jobs in the U.S., called for higher energy prices, and accelerated inflation. Fossil fuels from U.S. shale have lower carbon emissions than imports. There is a contradiction in this policy. This issue has even been called the Biden-Ukraine conspiracy theory, but given the current conflict and the Biden administration's energy policy, can it be called a mere allegation of personal corruption?
that Ukraine is a corrupted country, but because from now it's not truth.
So now I would think Putin would know the answer to that. I think he should release it. I think we should know that answer.